Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Before I get into today's review, do want to remind you, if you would like to support the Gaming Gang, we do have a Patreon. You'll find the link to that in the show notes. And be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. You'll find an invite link to our Discord server also in the show notes. So today I am going to share my review of the eagerly anticipated Pendragon Gamemaster's Handbook from Chaosium Inc. This 238-page hardcover is written by Greg Stafford, and it is available now. Carries an MSRP of $49.99. If you order from Chaosium Inc., you will receive the PDF with that absolutely free. Of course, if you just want to get the PDF alone, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $24.99. Also, stay tuned because I'll tell you how you can get into the running to win a copy of the Pendragon starter set in PDF. You might be wondering, well, wait a second, Jeff, why aren't you going to give away a copy of the Game Master's Handbook? I'll explain why in just a bit. And of course, like all of my contests, it'll be very easy to enter. All right, having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got the Game Master's Handbook for Pendragon. A few things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, my friends over at Chaosium Inc. were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book. I do want to give you a really good feel for what you're going to find inside. And then lastly, this is designed for the Game Master's eyes only. So if you're a Pendragon player, you have been warned. First thing we're going to do is take a look at the credits page. A lot of folks worked very hard to bring this to life, especially Greg Stafford, the late, great Greg Stafford. So let's give credit where credit is due. If you are not familiar with Pendragon, it is an Arthurian role-playing game. So it is all about the legend of Camelot and King Arthur and Guinevere and the knights and ladies and nobles, as well as courtly love and grand battles and so forth. It is also, in my opinion, the finest role-playing game of Arthurian legend that's out on the market. It is a great role-playing game. There's a reason why this has been around for decades. Interestingly enough, Greg Stafford always felt that this was his crowning achievement, which I would have thought would have been RuneQuest and Glorantha, but it wasn't. It's actually Pendragon. I find that to be very, very interesting. As far as the production quality, excellent. This paper stock is nice and thick. As you can see, it's got a matte finish. Those of you out there who hate glare on role-playing game book pages don't have anything to worry about here. We've got stitched binding, so this book is going to hold up very nicely to repeated use at your game table. And the artwork throughout is really good. There are some excellent pieces. It's not a uniform art style, I will point out. So we've got some which is line art. We've got some like this, which is supposed to be kind of a look back at the sort of tapestry artwork that you would see during the medieval period and such, but very, very cool throughout. So we're going to start off the Game Master's Handbook with a discussion of the setting. And it's important to note, your Pendragon will vary. So it's discussed what sources were inspirations on Pendragon, and there are many varied sources at work here. So you might want to have an Arthurian role-playing game that's got more of a Bernard Cromwell vibe or a Mary Stuart vibe to it. I myself, I would draw from Thomas Mallory's Le Morte d'Arthur, as well as T.H. White's The Once and Future Kings for my Pendragon campaign and my style and vibe, I guess I'll say, for my Pendragon. And it's encouraged that game masters do that, that you create your own version of the Arthurian legend for yourself and your players. I like that. We also get discussion about the medieval period and some famous people and important people in Arthurian legend during that time. I will mention that the setting information doesn't take up a lot of page space. I was kind of surprised by that. But then again, it's also important for you to know that you're not supposed to sweat the small stuff as far as Pendragon. You don't want to dive into the minutia. It's not important because what you're looking at is epic adventures with knights of the realm. We'll also move into a section discussing running Pendragon. And this is another fairly short section of the book. I know a lot of folks out there have a misconception that Pendragon is a rules-heavy role-playing game. It certainly is not. In fact, once you understand the core mechanics, and I will mention they are different than your standard basic role-playing sort of role-playing game like RuneQuest and Call of Cthulhu, there are some different mechanics involved with Pendragon, which makes this a very unique role-playing game too. But still, it's not a rules-heavy game. Now, you will encounter rules about different things, like tournaments and mass battles, but those aren't going on every game session by any stretch. So we'll get into information about combat as well as how to utilize the different attributes as a game master, such as, well, when would you call for a size roll or appearance roll? Next, we'll move into Arthurian acts, and this is going to get into a lot of details such as tournaments and feasts, visits to a noble's holding, or maybe taking part in activities at court. So a lot of interesting things here. And it's important that you, as a game master, kind of try to bring some of that to life at your game table as opposed to just questing and combat and things like that, because you really want to bring everything that Pendragon offers you to the table. Next up, we've got religion, and that is going to give us a discussion of Christian knights, pagan knights. We also have Wootonic knights, as well as what the focus those knights would have as far as their traits. Get some information about the religions themselves, some important religious places throughout England. You got to keep in mind that different knights of different religious beliefs can coexist. So you don't want to necessarily look at all of your player characters in the group have to have one religious belief. That's certainly not the case. We get into magic and miracles. And if you're not overly familiar with Pendragon, do keep in mind, player characters are not magic users. They do not have access to magic. The player characters are knights. That's how this game operates. So keep that in mind. If you didn't realize that, the player characters don't take on the role of Merlin or an apprentice to Merlin or Morgan Le Fay or anything like that. They are knights. I'm also going to take a moment here to tell you how you can get into the running to win a copy of the Pendragon starter set in PDF. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you might be wondering, well, geez, Jeff, why aren't you giving away a copy of the Game Master's Handbook? And the reason why is because I think a lot of folks out there are very, very curious about Pendragon, but they're kind of scared off. I already mentioned some folks think that this is a very rules-heavy game, and it is not. And sadly, folks out there just haven't taken the plunge or maybe even dipped their toes in the waters to check out Pendragon. So for one lucky viewer, I am going to give away a copy of the starter set, which is fantastic. By all means, check out my review. I loved it. Anyway, I'm going to give away a copy of that PDF. So to get into the running, you do have to be a subscriber to the channel. Please like the video. Now, I can't tell if you do that or not, but do me a favor and please give it a like. And then in the comment section, let me know who your favorite Arthurian character is. and why. And there are many, many of them. And then what I will do is randomly select one of those commenters, and I will announce the winner on the May 20th edition of the Gaming Gang Dispatch, my live stream. And no, you do not need to be watching in order to win, but you do need to check out the video to find out if you won. So there you have it. All right, back to the book. So we also have a chapter here on battle, and this is anything from small skirmishes to huge mass battles. One of the interesting aspects of the battle section here is the focus on what's going on with the player characters. And do they have a mission? Is there something that they're trying to achieve? Maybe they've been tasked with raiding the baggage train or capturing a noble. So we have a variety of different encounters the player characters could find themselves involved in. And I like that quite a lot. Once again, there are rules for mass battles and such, but it's not something that you're going to utilize all the time. And like I said, I think some folks out there get this misconception that there's all these rules to Pendragon. Yeah, but you don't use them all. So there you have that. Next up, we're going to get into our NPCs. So we have some of our important NPCs as far as the Arthurian legend. Then we also have some common folk as well. So common knights, druids, witches, sorceress. The longest section of the book really is our bestiary. So we will have just regular animals as well as supernatural creatures. We have the Fae. We also have fiends. Once again, you make Pendragon your own. So if you don't want fantastical creatures, or maybe you only want a few fantastical creatures, maybe you don't want the Fae or elves, essentially, in your Camelot. Maybe you don't want the dwarfs, even though they are present in Arthurian legend. But regardless, there's loads and loads of entities in the bestiary, very nicely done. And then as a very cool bonus, we will actually receive a couple of scenarios to introduce the game to starting knights. An aspect I really like about these scenarios is that these actually set the scene for the Great Pendragon campaign, which I believe is the next book that's on the horizon for Pendragon. And I am super excited about that because I've always heard great things about the Great Pendragon campaign, but I've never had an opportunity to take a peek at it. So I am very, very excited, very, very curious, because it's always been my understanding that the campaign actually runs from, I think it's prior to Uther Pendragon being king, all the way up to the death of Arthur. And once again, Pendragon is meant to be an epic generational role-playing game, which once again, I think is just an awesome selling point for Pendragon. We're going to wrap up with some appendices and our index. There's also a code for you to download the feast cards, because feasts are courtly events that can take place where a lot of things go on. So we do have a free code at the back for you to get that PDF absolutely free with those cards. All right, so that is a peek at the Game Master's Handbook for Pendragon. Let's head back over to the other cameras so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. If you follow the Gaming Gang, you already know I really enjoy Pendragon. I feel that it is the Arthurian legend role-playing game on the market, and it is second to none. It's certainly easy to see why the late, great Greg Stafford felt that Pendragon was his crowning achievement. And there's a lot to really like about this Game Master's Handbook. And the reality is, even though the core rule book has all the rules and character creation that you need in order to play Pendragon, I don't think Pendragon's complete without having the Game Master's Handbook. If you are the Game Master, there is a lot of great information in here, a lot of additional content that you're going to utilize at the game table. So this isn't just fluff by any stretch of the imagination. I love the fact that we actually get a couple of scenarios. That's not something we normally see in a Game Master's book. Sometimes we see those in core rule books, which I love to see. We also got a couple of scenarios in the Game Master's Handbook. That is so cool. Now, I will say I would have liked to have seen a bit more page space devoted to actually running Pendragon, especially in regards to traits and passions. I think that that could kind of be fleshed out a little bit more for Game Masters, because I think that's really one of the stumbling blocks Game Masters have with Pendragon when they're first learning the game and running the game, are the traits and passions. But it's not a huge deal that we don't get tons of information about it, because it is covered in the core rulebook. Also should mention, production quality is excellent, although there is artwork that is recycled from other releases for Pendragon, and it's kind of uneven. So there is no distinct style to the artwork, which is fine. It's just kind of jarring sometimes where you're like, wow, that's really nice. And you flip a couple of pages and you're like, some line art that looks fine. But all in all, I highly recommend the Pendragon Game Master's Handbook. Once again, Chaosium Inc. has done phenomenal work with a release for Pendragon. And if you are a game master running Pendragon, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that you must own the Game Master's Handbook. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Pendragon's Game Master's Handbook a 9.5 out of 10. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And of course, if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Don't forget, if you'd like to support the Gaming Gang, we have a Patreon. That link is in the show notes. And be sure to hang with the gang on Discord, because there's an invite link to our Discord server also in the show notes. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.